blessings and curses were a common way for Jewish teachers and prophets to communicate the understandings of God's will to the people. They tend to be very concrete and yet communicate something much bigger, the bigger picture. It was this and not that teaching that allows us to distinguish things and to understand new circumstances. It's a way to communicate metaphor and general ideas while still being pretty concrete. Listen to Jesus and see what the bigger picture is there for us to see.
Stand as you are able for the reading of the gospel, which this morning is from Luke 6:17 to 26. He came down with them and stood on a level place, with a great crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of people from all Judea, Jerusalem, and the coast of Tyre and Sidon. They had come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases, and those who were troubled with unclean spirits were cured. And all in the crowd were trying to touch him, for power came out of him and healed all of them. Then he looked up at his disciples and said, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, and when they exclude you, revile you, and defame you on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for surely your reward is great in heaven, for that is what their ancestors did to the prophets. But woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, for you will be hungry. Woe to you who are laughing now, for you will mourn and weep. Woe to you when all speak well of you, for that is what their ancestors did to the false prophets." The Gospel of the Lord.
The context for today's gospel is Jesus healing people. All sorts of people. Not just the ones who were perceived to be good and upright. His teaching style was not new, but the words he spoke were shocking. He asserted that those who were poor, hungry, weeping, hated, excluded, reviled, defamed, were blessed, while those who have riches and resources and laughter and good reputations were cursed. He turns popular understanding on its head. And if you were poor and marginalized, this was good news. But if you were, well, successful, maybe it wasn't so good. Today, consider who would be included in the blessing and who might be excluded. If you're successful, prosperous, and respected, maybe this teaching does not give you great vibes. But if you're someone who is on the margins of society, Jesus' words offer hope, don't they? The poor, the homeless, the hungry, the unemployed, the underemployed, the sick, the broken, the addicted, the refugee, the undocumented alien, those with criminal backgrounds, those who are LGBTQ, those who are living with mental illness, those who are not respected. These are the folks to whom Jesus offers the word of blessing. It's not conditioned on becoming upstanding and socially acceptable. It's just freely given. So how we respond to this depends a lot on our self-image and how we order our values. If we regard these people as outsiders and unworthy, of love and care, we'll have a hard time with Jesus' words for them, or we will start to develop all these wonderful little conditions that we start imposing on them to receive any sort of blessing. But if we have the mind of Christ, we'll develop love, grace. We'll receive people whom others reject as blessed sisters and brothers. What is our stand? How do we respond? The kingdom of God that Jesus inaugurates is not about patting the rich and powerful on the back and heaping praise on the successful and respectable. It's an upside-down moment, an upside-down world that extends love to include and embrace those who are challenged by the ordinary order of the world. If we're to be kingdom people, followers of this Jesus, we're asked to embrace this upside-down world. It can make no sense to us at all. But pause for a moment. Some of you may have taken apart an engine and put it back together, only to find that you had, extra pieces left over. But it sort of ran okay. That's how the world works, isn't it? And we celebrate those who can do that because, that takes a lot of skill and, the thing works, sort of. But it's not fully restored, is it? It takes kind of a obsessive, compulsive restorer of old things to make sure that every single piece is put back exactly as it originally was. And we really don't want to do that. When we heap praise on those who are perceived to be successful and scorn those who are perceived to be losers, you see, we're not embracing the healing of the whole world, just holding on to the partial perfection that leaves many people in suffering and pain. Just imagine that you get taken to the ER and the doctors and nurses and the technicians bandage up the wound on your right arm and they fix your leg, but they don't bother to treat the open gaping wound with the bone sticking out of it over here on your left side. Probably not going to be very happy with the outcome. But they did a great job with my right hand, just not the left. And that's how Jesus sees the world. Jesus didn't come to save a few, but to transform the whole world so that all of the pieces, all of the brokenness of the world would be healed and restored. That's what we're invited to embrace, is this bigger restoration of God's order. The greater perfection that God is calling into existence. If we stop our judging for a moment and consider how lives and societies become broken, we see what Jesus is pointing toward. If a child experiences physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, neglect, a parent being incarcerated, a parent being abused, they feel abandoned, or they suffer from mental illness or addiction or poverty, the child will be traumatized and will have a hard time functioning in the world as an adult. We know this, and yet, how do we respond to those situations? Well, we lock the kid up when he commits a crime. I recently met somebody who was being horribly abused at home. And one night, His face had been broken, his cheekbone, his nose, his eyes were all puffy from being smacked around. He was covered with blood and bruises. And then he stumbled down a highway, and he opened car doors, and he took change out of those cars, and he got a bag full of change. He was going to try to find a place to go where he could survive. And the police decided to help him. And they charged him with 200 counts of breaking and entering and locked him up for 11 years. Yes, it's illegal to break into cars and steal money. But there's a bigger picture present in this person's life. And our calling as Christians is to face the bigger picture, to look at the real story, to take action, to do something that heals the whole, and to heal those who are being injured. Now this runs counter to how we do business most of the time. Because if you're successful in business, you know how to externalize costs, right? If you have a lot of costs and you can get rid of them, you're going to make more money. Your shareholders are going to be happy, right? And those of us who, have retirement accounts are going to be happy because you're going to make profits for us. But when we externalize costs, we include things like the environment, the lives of our workers who actually make this stuff, right? Other social costs. We externalize them and we make a profit, but the whole world suffers socially. Fortunately, there are models of economics that reward those who don't do that, who don't externalize costs completely, but take social responsibility. Jesus tells us that blessings come when we're looking to the healing of the whole world, not just part of it. How many families do we know where there's a lot of dysfunction? I knew several families where people said, we put the fun in dysfunction. And yet, one child becomes the scapegoat. One child acts out the most and is blamed for the whole dysfunction of the family system. Happens all the time. Those kids end up in prison or dead. How would Jesus have us live as disciples? The first thing is we have to see his vision. A vision of inclusion, of love that extends beyond the successful people around us. Look, I'm addicted to success. We like to be successful. There's really nothing wrong with that. But we need to embrace a vision that includes everything. Where the planet is healed, where the lives of people are healed, where those who are excluded are brought in, where we build a better world for everyone. Because that's what Jesus is about. If you don't feel divine grace and love, it is probably because we've lost track of this greater peace and healing that Christ has in mind for the world. When we embrace that vision, we experience more of God's love, and we therefore have more love to share with the next person. We can start to see the kingdom of God taking shape because we're on board with the program. We're not fighting it. We're not avoiding it. And we are personally transformed, and the world around us is socially transformed. How shall we embrace this today? How shall we step out and reach out with welcome and words of blessing to new people? Because in this city alone, there are thousands of people who do not feel welcome, do not feel loved, do not feel blessed. Some are rich, some are poor, many in the middle. Some are black, some are white, some are Hispanic, some are Asian, some are gay, some are straight, some are men, some are women, some are something else. It doesn't matter. But they need to be welcomed and loved into Jesus' kingdom. And when we embrace that, the kingdom will appear here. May it be so. Amen.